One of the most frustrating things about being a God of War fan these days is that we don't know what comes next. After God of War 2018, we all knew that Santa Monica was gonna be working on the sequels. But at the moment, they could be working on the remake/remaster of God of War 1, it could also be an Atreus spin-off, or what I think we most want, a mainline Kratos game. And an argument can be made that not knowing is part of the fun, but that usually leads to a lot of speculation from people like me. And if you were to ask me, I really don't know what Santa Monica is currently working on, but I am positive that there's going to be at least one game where we'll go back to Greece before the series is over. And I know that just saying this will give some of you PTSD because apparently I kept saying, we're going back to Greece in my God of War Ragnarok playthrough. I don't remember where I said it, but apparently it was multiple times. And I get it, back then I should have realized that for the Norse games, Santa Monica wasn't going to take us back to Greece as that would take away the focus from the Norse Pantheon. But what you need to understand is that my desire to go back to Greece didn't come out of nowhere. There are things within the Norse saga that make me think Santa Monica is planning something with this old realm. But on top of that, there are a lot of important characters from that realm that might still be alive. And that's what I want to talk about today. With this list, I want to take a look at 10 characters from the Greek Pantheon that could still return in the future. First on the list isn't a single character, but a group of people. And they go by the odd name of humans. Yeah, I know it seems kinda silly to start off with such an obvious group of people. Everyone knows that Kratos gave humans the power of hope, which allowed them to restart their civilization. But I don't think people understand how important the Greek humans in the series are. To our knowledge, this is the only region in the world where humans aren't controlled by any gods, which would make them the first secular civilization of the series. And if Reddit atheists are anything to go by, these humans won't want anything to do with any gods however good they claim to be, especially if this god was responsible for destroying the realm in the first place. Of course, this is just one big assumption I'm making. It's possible, and I would even argue it's a good idea if there were two factions of humans. One group that went the more secular way, and another that still clings to the old ways of worshipping gods. This second group of humans could be integral to a God of War game because they could very well keep the last few gods alive. I base this idea on something mentioned in the first God of War novel, where some soldiers are wondering if the gods need human prayers the same way a tree needs sunlight. This of course is not considered canon, but it would be interesting if the next time we visit Greece there is a small group of people who are actively keeping the remaining gods alive by offering prayers and sacrifices. This of course wouldn't be enough to bring the gods back into power, but it could be enough to keep the more secular humans at bay. This confrontation between humans could offer the series a unique setting where the gods aren't at the top of the food chain anymore, which for a change might mean that they are on the good side, while the more secular humans have gone mad with their newfound power. This could lead to institutions similar to the Inquisition, where gods and demigods are brought before a council of humans to be executed. One of these brought before the council could be the Last Spartan.
Excuse me, what?
Alright, I know that the Last Spartan died in God of War 2, so there's no way he could return, right? Well, if you remember, in the end Kratos does turn back time, and in the intro of God of War 3 there are some Spartan soldiers attacking Olympus, so it's very possible that the Last Spartan made it back as well. But I get it, another objection to his return could be the amount of time that has passed between God of War 3 and the Norse saga. There is no way that a regular human could have survived hundreds of years. Right? Right! But who says the Last Spartan was a regular human? This idea comes from one of my Spanish YouTube buddies who also uploads God of War theories. And regarding the Last Spartan, he has theorized that he was Kratos' chosen champion. So the same way that Hermes had Danaus and Hades had Ulrich, Kratos, when he became the God of War, chose the Last Spartan to be his champion on Earth. Kratos might have even given the Last Spartan some of his powers. This would explain how he was able to survive the destruction of Sparta as well as reach the Island of Creation. All of these things give credence to the theory that the Last Spartan was more than just a human, which would put him in danger of being taken away by the atheist Inquisition I previously mentioned. It's also possible that he was given a position of power since he fought against the gods to establish the new world. Regardless of how well he gets along with the new humans, I think it could be interesting if we see him once more, but now as an old man. Can you imagine what his reaction would be if he ever saw Kratos again? My lord! But someone who would definitely not be calling Kratos lord is Triton. Looking back at my previous videos, I've come to realize that I've never talked about Poseidon's most famous son. As you would expect, Triton is one of those gods in the God of War series that we know exist, but we have never met in person. We know that he exists because in Chains of Olympus, Kratos needs to use his lance to breathe underwater. But after this minor appearance, Triton was never seen again. Although Poseidon did send soldiers named Tritons in Ghost of Sparta, but the OG Triton was never seen, not even during the events of God of War 3. Now, Triton is an interesting god to discuss because out of all of the missing deities, he is the one in the best position to take over as the new ruler of Olympus. Because the first god to die by Kratos' hands in God of War 3 was his father Poseidon, and this resulted in the sea swallowing the land, which in a way would make the underwater realm a lot more powerful. And now with an empty throne, Triton would have no problem ruling what remains of the Greek Pantheon. Now, we know from God of War Valhalla that Greece has already been rebuilt, meaning that humans somehow found a way to deal with the flooding caused by Poseidon's death. But unless they created submarines equipped with nukes, they wouldn't have a chance at defeating Triton. So it's possible next time we visit Greece, Triton might still be there. Another Greek god that I expect to see again is Morpheus, the god of dreams. When you think about it, Morpheus was a pretty important character in Chains of Olympus despite never seeing him in person. When Atlas stole Helios from the sky, Morpheus took the darkness that followed as an opportunity to take over Olympus. He did this by using his powers to place both mortals and gods into a deep slumber, only retreating when Helios was returned to the skies. Now, it's not clear what happened to Morpheus after this little stunt. Many fans think that Morpheus once again took over when Kratos killed Helios, and this could very well be the case. But I think it's more likely that after the events of Chains of Olympus, Zeus captured Morpheus and ordered someone or something to torture him for all eternity. This means that if we ever return to Greece, we might come across him still being tortured. He might even be a great villain for Atreus, who as you know is currently trying to interact with the streams in a more mystical manner. Imagine if in one of his dreams, a giant appears to him and tells him to visit his father's land to free some giants that escaped there. In reality, this would be Morpheus setting a plan in motion. I think I would prefer this over him going to Egypt. I think we can all agree that we want Kratos to be the one to visit Egypt, not Atreus. But if Atreus were to go to Greece, Morpheus can't be the only character that returns. I think Santa Monica needs to bring back a slightly more important character, Calliope. The last we saw Calliope was in Chains of Olympus, and based on what Kratos says about her in Valhalla, she is still there. But it's also possible that after the destruction of Olympus, the souls of Elysium were allowed to return the same way the ones from Hades did. But whether Calliope stayed or left Elysium, it doesn't matter. I think before the series ends, Kratos needs to see her at least one more time. But I also think a way to get more out of this character is by putting her in this hypothetical Atreus spin-off game. In this story, Atreus would have to wrestle with the fact that his father killed his first family. Would news of this change how he sees his father? Could he also be upset at the fact that Kratos purposely chose not to tell him? On the other hand, how would Calliope react at hearing that his father set out and started a new family? Would she feel like she wasn't worthy enough? Would she now want vengeance against her half-brother? Having these two in a game just creates a lot of interesting possibilities to expand on both their characters. Now, a character that doesn't need any more expanding is the Titan Typhon. He's big, he doesn't need any more expanding. Look, I think we can all agree that the version of Typhon in the God of War series was severely diminished in power. In Greek mythology, Typhon is a horrendous half-man, half-snake creature. Aside from that, he was also powerful enough to fight all of Olympus. It wasn't until Zeus trapped him under a mountain that peace on the world returned. On the other hand, Typhon in God of War 2 is just Big Blue Boy. I'm sure that this is the case because Santa Monica didn't have time to create such a complex character that would only be in the game for about an hour. So when it comes to power, I'm sure this version and the one in the mythology are the same. And this is important because we never see Typhon die in the God of War series. In fact, after Kratos got the bow from his eye, he vowed to make Kratos pay for it. But as I'm sure you know, this revenge arc went nowhere. At this point, Santa Monica has a lot of characters from the Greek Pantheon that could be used as potential villains for either Kratos or Atreus. And giving the father of monsters another shot, even if it's just for a boss fight, it would be awesome to say the least. Now, following Typhon, I think it's best if I address the next two entries at the same time. I'm doing this because by now you're probably tired of listening to me talk about Apollo and Artemis. And the truth is, there isn't much else to say about these characters. Similar to most characters on this list, both Apollo and Artemis are characters that we know exist within the God of War universe, but for some reason they have never made an official appearance. But the question still remains, what happened to both of these characters? Now, out of all of the characters mentioned here, Apollo and Artemis are the ones that I would be most comfortable saying that they died when Olympus was destroyed. But as they say in the showbiz, no body, no death, baby. So at least it's possible that Santa Monica will give them a role of some kind in a future Greek game. And in the case of Artemis, her appearance doesn't even have to be in a Greek game. Given that she's the goddess of the hunt, this whole time she could have been tracking Kratos in order to bring him to justice. And since Apollo is her brother, why not both? I admit that these two entries are just for OG fans that have always wanted to see a version of these two gods in the God of War series. But given Santa Monica's talent, I'm sure they'll be able to do some cool stuff with them. Now, you know what would be even cooler? If Kratos returns to Greece only to find out that he has another kid. A kid with who, you ask?
I ask you again, Kratos. Will you stay?
I know this one seems like a funny entry, but when you think about it, Aphrodite was probably one of the few gods that made it out of Olympus' destruction alive. From her interaction with Kratos, it seems like she had been in her bedroom for a long time, and wasn't planning on leaving anytime soon. Maybe after the servants passed away due to lack of sun or diseases, she was forced to go out and see how much destruction Kratos had caused. And what do you think her reaction would have been like? One possibility is that Aphrodite felt the weight of responsibility and took on a more responsible attitude to ensure the remaining gods would make it out alive. Now, a more darker take is if the new humans in power decided to take her in as one of their, servants. While this is really messed up, I also think it could be an interesting character exploration for her, as what she found fun doing while she was in power, now it has become a curse. This barbaric act on the human's part could also be seen as vengeance for all the grape-eating Zeus engaged while he was in power. Now instead of the gods using the humans, it would be the other way around. Again, I know this entry got really dark, but you knew it wasn't out of the question when I mentioned an atheistic inquisition beheading gods with the blade of Olympus. But aside from this, Santa Monica might also want to do something with what happened between her and Kratos. I know this would probably never happen, but at least her interaction with Kratos has given Santa Monica permission to say that Kratos had another kid. That is, if you agree to stay with her. Whatever the case is, I think Aphrodite is one of the gods that most likely made it out alive. But one character I'm 100% sure made it out alive, because if he didn't there wouldn't be a Greece for us to talk about, is Atlas. A big reason why I wanted to start this list by talking about the humans of the Greek Pantheon is because I knew they would eventually have to address the issue with Atlas. If I am right and a big chunk of the population is now more secular, how do you think they would feel at the thought of having to depend on a Titan for their existence? All Atlas would have to do to end their civilization is get really depressed. But from what we know, it seems like Atlas is still holding up the world. But whether Atlas is currently free or still holding the world, it doesn't matter. Because the most important thing Santa Monica needs to address with Atlas is his problematic relationship with Kratos. As you know, Atlas at one point wanted to destroy Olympus, but thanks to Kratos' intervention, he was instead condemned to hold the world on his shoulders. After this, Atlas felt nothing but anger towards the ghost of Sparta. But this attitude changed when Kratos informed Atlas that he wanted to destroy the gods. He even gave Kratos the last of his powers to accomplish this. But what Atlas doesn't know is that Kratos didn't just kill all the gods. He also made sure to kill all of the remaining Titans. And I'm not exactly sure how Atlas will take this piece of news when he learns of it. Would he get really depressed at the thought of being the last of his kind, and maybe let go of the world? Or would he vow to get revenge on Kratos? I know some of you don't like the idea of making Greece the setting for Atreus' spin-off game. But Atlas is also one of those characters that could be really interesting to explore alongside Atreus, since they are both the last of their kinds. Whatever the case is, I think out of all of the characters in this list, Atlas is the one that Santa Monica needs to address before the series ends. But there you have it guys, that is my list of the 10 Greek characters that could still be alive. Let me know if this has you hyped in any way. Now as always, I want to give a big thanks to all of my members for supporting the channel monthly. Without you guys, none of these videos would ever get done, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos. I know it may not seem like much, but trust me, it really does help. And with that said, thanks for watching. And remember, go forth in the name of Olympus.